Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you and peace to the rest of you. The reason that I titled this, The Nigger and All of Us, I'm going to explain towards the middle or the end of this. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to illustrate to you certain examples from where I'm living now. A very conservative Muslim country, and it's an Arab country. And when I say conservative, I mean to all outside appearances. And privately, it is actually losing the conservatism, and they're even losing their religion because they're following behind the Europeans, and whatever the Europeans do, they're willing to imitate. It's just a question of exactly when and how much they'll imitate them at any given time. How long is it going to take for more of these people to become atheists, as an example? And how long is it going to take for more of them to become Christian? And I mean specifically white Christian with no revolutionary spirit to it. In this nation, you've got two cultures. You have a city dwelling culture, and then you've got a countryside culture. And they're referred to, I'll just say the urbanites, and then the Bedouins, the desert wanderers. And right now, nobody wanders the desert. Let's make that clear. But the Bedouins are the descendants of those who used to wander the desert. And usually they are the third generation living in houses at this point. So this means that their grandparents were children when the homes were built, the homes that the Bedouins were going to live in. And since the grandparents were kids at that time, the grandparents grew up in these homes, their parents had to learn how to live in these homes. And later on, and of course subsequently, a lot of the Bedou today know some things about living in the desert, but not everything. And it's nothing to see a house that a family lives in with a tent right next to the house. And they'll use the tent for things like entertaining guests and serving coffee and holding on to their past. But let me tell you what the Bedouins have an issue with, because you don't want to hear all of this, but I'm going somewhere with it, and thanks for bearing with me, by the way. You see, the urbanite culture values education, especially in the men. And they're the ones who are mostly bilingual. They travel. They expose themselves, and if they can afford to travel outside the country, they do. If they can afford to travel inside the country, they do. And they oftentimes visit each other. They do not participate, they did not participate in tribal warfare, and they do not participate in any customs of the Bedouins that are reminiscent of any type of tribal warfare. They've been detribalized. And as they've been detribalized, they can all marry each other with no sort of regard for one's tribal origin, because they do have tribal origins, but they've given them up, so to speak. So the tribal taboos that affect the Bedouins about who they can marry and who they can't don't affect the urbanites. It doesn't make a goddamn bit of difference to them. They don't care. They're looking at your education. That's what they want to know about. They want to know, are you dumb as hell? The Bedouins don't value education, especially in their men. They look down on it. Their boys beat up other boys who value education and reading and stuff like that. That's how they are. When they get to middle school and high school, the boys who don't want to cheat get beaten up by the others. Cheating is not only a part of the culture here, it is enforced, not officially, but culturally. Niggerishly, it is enforced. The people here in this country do not speak their own language properly. I speak their language to them properly, and they say, I don't speak English. Some of them say, oh, I don't speak English, and then they laugh and tap their friends on the shoulder because they're looking for approval for saying that they don't speak another language. And in fact, this is not after I've spoken English to them, but after I've spoken standard Arabic to them. It's a culture of ignorance. And they enforce this ignorance on each other, especially on the boys. The girls are given a pass to not cheat and to study and to learn things. They allow it. It's looked upon as being feminine. The only difference, well, first I'm going to say you now know why I said the nigger in all of us as the title of this. Now you understand. I'm telling you that another people are more niggerized than we are. We ain't the only niggas out here. Y'all ain't want to heard me when I said it the first time, but I'm giving you evidence of it. We ain't the only niggas on the planet. We're the most resistant to niggerization, if anything, because for us to be niggerized, we had to be kidnapped, traumatized, enslaved, raped, everything else. And yet you find that African Americans and African Brazilians and maybe some others in the diaspora are the most resistant to the niggerization of all oppressed peoples on the planet. And then you come here where these people have never been colonized. Their neighbors have. That is true. They may have cousins across the border in a neighboring country that were under colonization, but these folks here where I live, these Bedouins were never effectively colonized. It didn't happen. Even when they were officially colonized, effectively they never were. They just imitated whoever was in power as long as those people in power were not darker than them. When the Turks were here and in power, they imitated the Turks. They didn't have to live with them, they just imitated them. If they lived with them, they'd speak Turkish. When the British had control, they imitated the white Britishers. And they didn't even live with them, they just imitated them. But they imitated them less. But the point I'm making is that without them going through the same things we've been through, they are as niggerized and as broken as we are. This was why I said the nigger in us all. I meant us all, not just African Americans or just black people as a race. I meant humanity. And I'm going somewhere with this. One of the niggerish things that they do here, because they got a bunch of niggerish things they do. They're broken, they're dysfunctional. But two things they do are going to sound very familiar. They interrupt each other all the time. The one that's wrong is the one that does the most interrupting. And consequently, that person becomes stupider and stupider and stupider as other people around them become more intelligent, because they keep rejecting information. They keep on refusing to even hear the end of the sentence. The dumber they are, the more they interrupt. I had an argument with a student a few days ago about that. To tell you how stupid this kid was, he interrupted me when I was making an announcement to his class in his own language. He interrupted. I said, "You shut the hell up and stop interrupting me, you Bedouin. You retard." And the others kind of laughed at him because they knew that even among the Bedouin, he was the dumbest and the most backwards. He was the most Bedouin. So even others had to laugh at him. And I said to him, "Why are you interrupting me when I'm making an announcement to the class? You wouldn't interrupt me if I was from your own country." He said, "I need a translation, man. I don't understand you." I looked at the other classmates. I looked at his classmates. And I said, "Did you all hear what he just said? You need a translation from Arabic to Arabic." I've never seen that in my life. That was a lie. I've seen it a lot, actually. I just wanted to make him feel extra stupid. This dude tried to cheat. He insisted on taking more time than what the test allowed. Every dysfunctional nigger thing you can think of, this guy was doing it. He just wasn't black that he knows of. You and I would know he is, but he doesn't know it. He didn't have to know it to be a nigger. He's a completely niggerized Bedouin with no outside help or breaking. We are discussing our niggerization and our deniggerization. How we're going to go from niggers to being men and women again. We're at least discussing it. Now we're doing it the wrong way, and I'm going to point out how we're doing it. But these guys here aren't even discussing it. They don't let anybody discuss it. If anybody tries to tell them anything, all the rest will shout him down and interrupt him and argue with him linguistically and semantically so that it degenerates into a shouting match and nobody knows what any word means anymore. That's what happens. Does that sound familiar? Is that not what we do? We start asking for definitions of basic words. We start semantics and linguistic arguments. Then we frustrate each other by interrupting each other. And before you know it, it's a shouting match. Because we're niggers. We're discussing deniggerization, but we're still discussing it like niggers. If we, black folks of all nationalities, do if we do three things. Number one, think carefully if we're going to introduce a new term. And I'm not knocking anybody that's introduced the new terms. They meant well. Sergeant Willie Pete meant well. He didn't mean any harm. It's just that we took it didn't want to hear the points that were valid, so we decided to make semantic, linguistic, niggerish arguments out of it. So if we think carefully before we introduce new terms or coin new phrases, and we stop degenerating into linguistic and semantic arguments to try to undermine the validity of a point that we find to be inconvenient. And 3, we stop effing interrupting each other all the damn time because we disagree, or as soon as we disagree. We will then begin to discuss our deniggerization as ex-niggas instead of as niggas. I'm mentioning this because I saw them make the same mistakes over here, and I thought, wait a minute, they don't have an excuse. Our religion has a framework to prevent all of this. So for them to be niggas, that means they have to abandon the religion. And that's not excusable even by their own standards. So they have become niggas because they abandoned what they knew was wrong to abandon. Therefore, why do I have to look up to them and respect them, even though we have the same religion? I'm not required to do this. It's like I've said in the last one, we men are not required to be stupid so that women can run black female fuckery games on us, or any type of female fuckery games on us for that matter, because black women ain't the only one that engage in it, and black men ain't the only ones that engage in it. But we're not required to be stupid so that they can run these games on us. And when they realize that we're not stupid, we're still not required to be patient so that they can keep trying to run these games on us and then come to us with the bill, but none of the benefits. No. It's not the way that works. And so I'm saying that with us African Americans, if we were to do these 3 things, 1, think carefully about introducing the new terms we're going to introduce. I'm not saying we don't introduce new terms, and I'm not knocking anybody for asking for a clear definition of these terms when we're discussing these things. Nobody in their right mind would knock someone else for doing it. I'm saying that if we do think carefully before we invent or coin a new term or phrase, just to avoid problems as much as possible. And then secondly, we don't degenerate into linguistic, semantic, evasive arguments because we don't want to hear someone tell us we got to do something differently. And then 3, we stop interrupting each other every time we disagree. Then we can start, we move in our communication from nigga to ex-nigga. Because well, I'm living among some niggas right now. These are, like I said, if we niggas, they are jigaboo, porch monkey, tree swinging, spear chucking, Tarzan chasers. They are niggas. They are sub niggas. Because they don't have an excuse for what they're doing. And we think we're the only ones, we think we're the lowest ones. And I'm telling you, every community's got it. But if you want to find the niggas of these other peoples that we look up to in the U.S., like there's some kind of example to follow, let me tell you that the U.S. has accepted the luckiest people from these countries that we look at. They don't come to the United States from Korea with nothing. They don't come to the U.S. from India or Pakistan with nothing. They don't come to the U.S. from an Arab country with nothing. They're neither the richest nor the poorest in their countries. The richest don't have a reason to live except to leave except to visit, or if something changes in their country. The poorest can't. The ones of them that are somewhere in the middle, they got the most reason. They're developing themselves, but they can't break through that glass barrier in their own country. So going abroad to some other developed country is a good idea. They come here with not a hell of a lot, but they do come here with something. They come with more than we come with. And that's why we need to stop comparing ourselves and our financial lack of success to them and their financial success. They are first given a platform, and that is us, our backs. And they've already got something, and they're given a bit of aid. It's usually not financial. There are no handouts that are sitting here waiting on them like what we think. But what does happen is that they're simply given less paperwork to go through or help with the paperwork. But by the same token, we see that, and we don't see the ones they left behind in comparison to whom we are better. We don't see that. So when you see the Arab liquor store owner or the Indian liquor store owner, you don't see the dysfunctional niggas in their own countries that they left behind, even that might have been their own relatives. You don't see it. You don't know that in Pakistan there's a serious problem with child molestation. And in India, there's a serious problem with it. You're not aware of this. You think that it's only in our communities that we've got child molestation and incest really bad. No, you don't know that in one of the highest income zip codes of New Jersey, it is a major problem. Rich white folks are doing this. You think it's just us. No. You think it's just in the hood. No, not at all. Go to these slums in these other countries. I've been to Morocco and I've walked through these slums. And I saw some guys eyeballing me thinking they're going to rob me. I ain't even from the hood in the U.S., but I knew that I was in a bad area. And I understood, okay, these cats thinking they're going to rob me. And I knew the only way they could do it is if they were armed. They got, and Morocco's a nice country. People there are very polite. But when I was in that bad area, they were looking like, man, is he from here? We don't know him. And so what I did was I got on the phone and I started talking in Spanish. And they realized then that they started to realize that I was not from there. But they also realized that if they were to do something, then some foreign embassy would be pressuring their local police to investigate the matter. There was also something else I did. I'm not going to say exactly what it was. But the point I'm making is that you can see dysfunction when you go to these other nations and you think it's just you. You think only us have this problem. No, they wouldn't allow only us to have this problem. It's not the way it works. But see, in the end, also, black folks, despite the fact that the world's been niggerized and dysfunction is everywhere, if we fix certain things about ourselves in certain steps, we will be better than everybody else. To a certain extent, we're already better than quite a few people because what they've been through may not justify what they've become. Whereas in our case, what we've been through, my goodness, it's beyond comparison in terms of both severity and time. Others have been through things more severe than we have, but it's been for a shorter time. Others have been through things less severe than we have, but maybe for a longer stretch of time, like the gypsies. They've been oppressed longer than black folks, but it's not as severe an oppression. Or like the Palestinians who've been through stuff we ain't been through, but they've been through it for a shorter stretch of time. Or like the Rohingya people who've been through something worse than what we've been through, but it's been for a short stretch of time. But you take the severity and the duration both together, and it's pretty much us that takes the cake. And look at what we're not. When you go abroad, you will see what we're not, and you will say, thank Allah, I'm black. Or thank God, I'm black. The point I'm making is you're going to be thanking your creator that he created you black and not something else. Now, you can apply this within the race or without the race, either way. But if we do these three things, we will we're already communicating, trying to fix it. To a certain extent, we're discussing it. That's good. Now, the next step is to do these three things I mentioned to enhance the discussion. And then we can start discussing it not as niggas, but as ex-niggas. One last phenomenon I want to mention about niggas, and that's something that happens in both places. And that's the woke nigga phenomena. Now, I'm going to make that another video, but I want you to understand that there is such a phenomena and it does exist. And when I say the woke nigga phenomena, like I said, I have already told you that we need to be careful before we introduce and coin new terms. So I'm going to I'm introducing this, if you want to call it that, the woke nigga phenomena. And I'm going to explain this definition in another recording. But I have thought it through carefully because I said we needed to do this, right? I thought it through carefully. There's also something else about the Pookie and Ray Ray and educated lame terms that are being thrown around. And that is that while the originator did not mean any harm and he wasn't trying to cause confusion, we turned around and made confusion about it because we didn't want to accept the validity of the intended point. From now on, I'm going to use the term IDNS. Intentionally dysfunctional negative stereotypes. When I'm referring to not just Pookies and Ray Rays or just people from the hood, but when I'm referring to specifically the lowlives among us, who are lowlives because they think we're supposed to be lowlives, and they if you give them a way out, they wouldn't take it. I'm going to start referring to them. I'm not going to talk about necessarily Pookie and Ray Ray. Not going to do that. I'm talking about lowlives. When I refer to black women chasing down the worst among the men, pursuing them, and then trying to get more responsible men they didn't want to foot the bill. I'm talking about these women chasing after the IDNS males, and these women are IDNS females. That's real. I'm gonna get into that next recording. But right now, just understand this. Niggas are everywhere. We're actually better off than others. We're at least discussing our reform. And in order to enhance that, the next step is to think carefully about the terms and phrases we introduce. Stop deteriorating into semantic and linguistic nigger arguments to try to undermine the validity of an intended point. And number 3, stop interrupting each other all the goddamn time. Now, number 2 does not refer to asking people for clarity in the definitions to make sure you understand what they mean. That's normal. Somebody says Pookie and Ray Ray. If you simply ask, or you simply say, okay, to address your point, I just want to understand exactly the limits of what you mean by Pookie or Ray Ray so that I don't misunderstand you and address a question you weren't even asking or address a point you didn't make. Do you mean just hood guys in general? Do you mean the criminals among them? Do you mean specifically the ones that enjoy the life of crime? You define it and then I'll answer. I don't mean asking that question is wrong, but what I mean is deciding to say, educationally define a Pookie and a Ray Ray. You don't know what it is. You can't tell me nothing because you don't know what it is. We don't have time for that. That is a very niggerish linguistic semantic argument that is unnecessary. That's what I mean. We need to get rid of it. I hope this has been a benefit. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for listening.